House Democrats have drafted a new article of impeachment against President Trump if members of the Trump cabinet do not take action to remove him. The resolution could be introduced as soon as tomorrow. Joining us now, House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn. And Congressman, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have Speaker Pelosi and you and the Democratic leadership, have you made a firm final decision whether or not to vote on impeachment of President Trump this week?
I think so. I think that will come probably Tuesday and maybe Wednesday, but it will happen this week. The article has been drawn up. Jamie Raskin and the leadership been working very hard to make sure that it is exactly what is required to demonstrate to the Senate, well, maybe the House first, that this president has rendered himself really unqualified to be president.
Congressman, if the House does vote to impeach, will you delay sending it over to the Senate until those two Democrats who won in Georgia are certified and Chuck Schumer becomes the majority leader, which also raises the question, does it make sense for the Senate to have a trial even after President Trump leaves office?
Well, I don't know that that's the House's business. Our business is to impeach, which is basically an indictment. And then time and circumstances will determine when it will go over to the Senate. You may recall the first time the president was impeached, Nancy Pelosi worked with the managers to make a determination as to when to deliver those articles to the Senate. They were not delivered the next day. They were delivered at a time that was most appropriate. And so we'll do the same thing in this instance. But remember, Chris, we tell voters all the time that your vote is your voice. And I believe we have to practice the same thing. Our vote is our voice. And we want to voice disapproval of the actions taken by this president last Wednesday and the week before down in the vote in Georgia.
Congressman, I understand the reasons to vote to impeach. There are some practical arguments against impeachment. It further divides the country. It mobilizes the Trump base. Perhaps most importantly, it could interfere with Joe Biden beginning his administration, confirming his nominees, getting to work. Do you find any of those arguments persuasive?
Yes, I find all of them to be persuasive, but that doesn't mean that the House should not do its work. Remember, the Senate determines guilt or innocence, and that has to do with the Senate schedule. Now, the House has to do its business. We call ourselves the People's House. The vast majority of the American people, I saw the poll results this morning, say this man that should be removed from office. So if we are the People's House, let's do the people's work and let's vote to impeach this president, and then we'll decide later, or the Senate will decide later, what to do with that an impeachment.
Let's go back to the events of Wednesday afternoon. As a veteran of the civil rights movement, you have seen plenty of violence before, but honestly, how worried were you about the safety of your colleagues in the House and yourself?
Well, no, Chris, I've been telling my friends and relatives that I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that on Wednesday, I never got afraid. I was not afraid at all. The police that were assigned to me, the Capitol Police, did a remarkable job. They got me off the floor. In fact, I turned around and our so-called undisclosed secure location, Nancy Pelosi and I arrived there at the exact same time. So I want to thank the Capitol Police that were in charge of my safety. They did a great job. I just wish they had the leadership at the top that they're deserving of.
Well, let me ask you, though, because you have an unmarked office inside the Capitol, and you say that although it doesn't say Jim Clyburn on it, doesn't say House Majority Whip on it, that the mob found it on Wednesday. Do you think that there's the possibility that they had some inside help from people inside the Capitol, or even perhaps at some level of the Capitol Police?
Well, I don't know that, and I would not make that accusation. I'll just tell you what the facts are. There is a mock office. There's an office that's got my name on the door, but they didn't bother that office. They went to the office where I usually work and where I usually am, and for some reason they found that office. I have no idea whether or not they were up there before, whether they got some other scheme. Somebody may have just talked about it. So I'm not going to make that accusation. I do know this. My staff was in my office. They had all the furniture and stuff at the door, and there were people trying to get in.
President-elect Biden this week had this to say about the events on Wednesday, the riot and the assault on the Capitol on Wednesday. Take a look, sir.
No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently.
Congressman, do you think that there was a race component to the police response on Wednesday as compared to some demonstrations, well, over the years, but specifically the Black Lives Matter protests this summer?
Absolutely. And I think that everybody in the country, irrespective of what side of that question you may be on, you know there was a difference in the way they treated these, you may call them protesters, I call them insurrectionists, and the way they treated the peaceful protesters of Black Lives Matter. And you saw what the president, that's where they get their signals from. The president went out and ordered the removal of demonstrators near the White House so he could stand up with an upside-down Bible in front of St. John's Church. These people got their signals from him. That's the kind of leadership that this president has been portraying, and there are a lot of people who saw in that leadership how they should conduct themselves. That's why I've said, and I'll say it again, that it's a shame that the hard-working rank-and-file Capitol Police did not have better leadership.
Finally, Congressman, Democrats are going to have a majority in this session of Congress, but not much of one. A one-vote majority in the Senate, a razor-thin majority in the House. As a matter of practical politics, won't President Biden have to scale back his agenda just to get anything passed through this Congress when it's so tightly divided?
I do not think so. I don't think that President Biden's agenda should be scaled back at all. He should be robust with it, simply because the people voted for it, and everybody in the House and the Senate know that. I think that he has to be careful how he makes these presentations. I think he has to inform people as to what it is he's trying to do, and hopefully get bipartisan support for it. But I've said this before as well. If he doesn't get the bipartisan support, do as Truman did. When he could not get the Congress to move to integrate the armed services, he issued an executive order. The Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order. I can go down through history and show you how many times significant decisions have been made by executive order. And so I think that Biden should make every effort to reach out to both sides of the aisle to get common sense legislation passed. But if they aren't going to be cooperative, then he should use his executive authority and get it done.
Congressman Clyburn, thank you. Thanks for joining us this Sunday, and please come back, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.